Hey guys, it's Wyvern. Welcome back to another video. So for today's video, I'm going to be making a rhythm track in Ableton from start to finish. Now this tutorial is designed for beginners or people that are looking to want to produce in Ableton and make rhythm in Ableton. So this is going to be very beginner friendly. If you do know what you're doing inside of Ableton though, I still think it's a good watch because I'm going to be going over my general songwriting process. And if this tutorial is too beginner for you, I am going to be announcing a new Patreon tier soon where I'm going to be doing more advanced rhythm production content. So make sure to follow my Instagram for when I announce that one and give me a follow on Patreon for when I drop that new tier. So first things first, here is Ableton and you have two modes pretty much. So when you click tab here, you can see that we go between the live mode and pretty much like the composition mode. You can toggle those up here or by just clicking tab on your keyboard, it goes between them. So yeah, if you're not seeing what I'm seeing, that might be why. Also on top of that, you do have your audio and MIDI tracks here, as well as your return tracks here and your master channel. So by default, most of the tracks go into the master channel. And one other thing I'd like to explain is, yeah, if you're wondering how all my things are colored the same, you can right click on any track and color it like this. And also when you create a new clip, say like that, by just double clicking, and this is a different one, you can go assign track to color clips, it'll do that. I like to basically group all my different types of tracks and color them the same. So I think that's a pretty useful tip, and I'll show you what I'm going to be doing later regarding that soon. The first thing I like to kind of do is kind of lay out some markers for my track structure. So in Riddim, most intros are about 16 to 32 bars. In today's episode, we're just going to be doing a simple 16 bar intro. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to right click up here and click add locator, and I'll just name this one intro. And you can also zoom in by hitting control and scroll wheel. And so I can zoom in, make sure that's nice and on grid. Another thing I do as well is if you right click, you can see that I have it on narrow grid. Now this just means that when I zoom in, the grid will be adaptive, and that's in the adaptive grid setting, of course. You can also have it fixed grid like this, but I think adaptive grid is way better. And so I'll put another marker right here at 17, which will be after 16 bars, it'll be beat 1 of bar 17. So I'll put drop 1 up here, and then I usually like to do 48 bar drops. So pretty much what I'll do is I'm just going to measure that out right here, and that'll be 48 bars later at bar 65. I'll just put here midsection. And I'm just going to zoom out again and do another section here. This will be drop 2. Zoom out again. I'm just going to place another locator at the end here. This will be for the outro. And then do another section right here. This will be for the fade out. And then I'll put another one right here. Just going to zoom in a little bit. And this will just be for the end of the track. And so yeah, now we have a basic song structure laid out, and I'd recommend doing this. I might include a little basic Ableton template on Patreon for those who are following. So look forward to that after this video, and feel free to download it and use it as a general structure for your tracks. So yeah, what I'll do here is I'll just kind of explain the different types of tracks here. So we've got audio tracks. These ones are the ones you can drop your samples into. So I might grab a kick drum real quick here. And I'm just going to drop that in there like that, zooming in on that. And so yeah, you can pretty much just drop all your samples on here. And what I like to do for my drums is I'll just either by right clicking over here and clicking insert audio track, or just by duplicating the audio track by hitting Control D, I'm just going to lay out some groups real quick. So I'm going to do the kick, and then we'll have another one for hats, and another one for percussion, and then another one for the clap. And I'm just going to hit H to kind of consolidate those all to make them the same. You can also hit this down here, does the same thing. And I'm just going to color those white for this group. Another one I'll do is I'm going to name this one bass, and then this one sub, and I'm just going to group those in a group here by selecting both and hitting Control G. I'm just going to rename this one to SC, and this will be for our sidechain. and I'll explain what sidechaining is a little bit later into the track creation process. But what I'll be doing here as well is I'm just going to insert some more MIDI tracks. I'll name this one Instrument 1 and then Instrument 2, and just hitting Control R to rename those. And then I'm just going to put them inside the sidechain group as well, and I'll just give them a bit of a different color here. So maybe this lighter purple here, and then we'll do like a pinkier purple for the bass and sub layer. And then I'm going to insert another audio track, and this is going to be for my FX, and I'll show you how I set those up later. Just do a green for that one. In fact, what I might do is swap around the colors, do the drums green, and then do the effects purple like that. So yeah, hit H again, kind of makes it fit the screen there. And yeah, what I'll also show you guys here is, up here you have your little loop marker. So you can either do one or two things. You can just select in the middle of the area and hit Control L to create a loop. And if you right click here, you can turn it off and on. And what I like to do is when I'm first creating my track, I might just create a little bit of a loop. Maybe, let's see, that's a 2-bar loop. That'll work. I might do a 4-bar loop and just start out with the drums first. So I'm just dragging that out there. And I'm just going to highlight a space here that's equal to 2 beats. And I'm just going to duplicate the kick a little bit. And I'm just going to make a basic drum pattern real quick. Also, one thing you guys may have noticed is I am using the Favorites tab in Collections. Now, the way that the Favorites tab works is if you have a folder on the side here, which is easy to do, you can just add your own folder down here in your File Explorer. And basically what I've done is I've kind of just created a big sample folder called Seb Samples, and I've just dropped every single, sample pack or drum kit that I have and dragged them all in here, and then I've pretty much gone through them and kind of selected out my favorite samples. So for this one, I might do an example here. I'll just search for hi-hat, and I'm just going to have a look in maybe my Cymatics hip-hop drums real quick. And I reckon I'll grab that hi-hat, and let's say I want to use that in the future and have it easily accessible. I'll just right-click there and go Favorites. Or you can also sort them into different colors, and I believe you can also rename these, so it doesn't have to be different colors, it can just be whatever names you would like it to be for organization purposes. But yeah, as you can see here, that hi-hat is now in my favorites. And I reckon what I'll do is I'm going to use this hi-hat for this song, and I'll show you how we can turn it into a bit of a ride cymbal. And so I'm just going to copy this over every beat, just so that it's like that, and we'll play it back. Right, so we are missing a clap, and what I'll do is I'll just search up here for clap, and I've just got the Sakura claps for now. I will say, if you haven't already, go check out Sakura's SoundCloud and grab his free sample packs. He has, I think, about 7 or 8 free sample packs out at the moment, and all the drums in them are spectacular. I've been using them for every song since I've started producing Riddim in 2023. And so I'll just grab a clap that I think will sound nice. I might go for this jellyfish one, and I'm just going to shorten it and fade it on the edges, and duplicate that over. But yeah, the drums are a bit dry at the moment, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of reverb to them. I'm also just going to assign that color to that kick there. And so what I've got down here is I've got a couple return tracks. So this is a type of track you can do by clicking Insert Return Track, and it'll show up there. But on this one, I've got a reverb, which is just the stock Ableton reverb. And on this, I have it a little bit of decay and a low cut, so that anything I input into it will cut the lows out. This is just so that if there's any like low end sounds that might be coming through, they're not going to go through the reverb and create a ton of phasing. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use these little numbers on the side here, and I'm just going to up that to about we'll go negative 15, and you can hear now that the clap will start to go through that sound. I'm going to do the same for the hi-hat, but only put it at around negative 20. Might do a bit less actually, maybe -25. And the hi-hat isn't coming through a lot. I kind of want to transform it into a bit of a ride. So I'm gonna search for the vocoder here, which you can also find it in audio effects. But I already have it in my favorites. And so I'm just going to put that down here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change it to noise mode on here. Then I'm going to up this to about 350 milliseconds. And pretty much what this will do is it'll add a bit of a noise tail to the hi-hat. So I'm just going to solo it out so you can hear it better. And I'm just hitting S on my keyboard to solo that one. If that isn't working for you, by the way, it could have been because this MIDI option is on. That's just toggled by clicking M. So you want to make sure that's off if you're ever trying to like bring up, you know, the automation or solo tracks. And from there you can play with the parameters a bit to find a nice tonality. So at the moment it is a little bit too heavy in the mids. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an EQ8 here, select the high pass mode. I'm just going to bring that up to around 3000. So you can hear now it's a lot more shiny like a cymbal would normally be. Might bring that up in volume as well by using the gain on the EQ. So that's sounding pretty good, but I reckon we do need to spice things up a bit by adding some percussion. So I'm thinking maybe like a woodblock sound might be kind of cool. You can also just use the stock Ableton samples. There's a lot of really good sounds in here. I reckon that one sounds pretty cool. So I'm just going to pop that there and then kind of cut it off before the clap. That sounds pretty good, but I kind of want it to have a bit more stereo and more of that reverb. Because I noticed in the sample, it's got reverb, but it's really mono for some reason. So I'll just bring that up to maybe -10. Not even -5 that, let's see. I'm just going to bring it into EQ to take out some more of that low end that's not really needed. Maybe put it up at 1000 Hertz. There we go. Alright, so now that we've got a basic drum groove, what I'm going to do is start designing a bass. So here we go. I'm just going to highlight an area real quick, and then I'm going to hit Control-Shift-M, and that's going to create a MIDI clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a MIDI note down here, just double click on F right there, and then I'm going to stretch that one out to about a quarter note, and I'm just going to hit Control-D and duplicate it across. So you can hear right now it's not making any noise, but in order for it to make noise, we'll have to drop an instrument on top. So if you're not using Reason, I'd say do this next step with Vital, but we're just going to drop a Reason Rack onto here. And so now we can begin the sound design process. So I'm going to open up Malstrom, of course, and then I'm just going to solo this track while I do the sound design, just so that I can hear the bass better. Just going to make a simple square 4 bass today, just to kind of make it very beginner friendly here. So I'm going to go to modulator B curve 20, which is just the hump shape, and then I'm going to make this one 8th note here, and I'm just going to up the volume all the way, and then you can hear what we get. One thing I'm going to do is maybe utilize one of these slope shapes and make that 2/4. Then I might play with some of these modulator knobs here. And I'm just playing around with different things here and just seeing if I can make a cool sound. So yeah, I'm just upping the motion here, but then at the same time making mod B pull the motion back, just for a bit more unique movement. And also use the filter envelope here. I kind of just like to set the decay sustain release at max and then bring the attack to about 50. So yeah, I reckon that's sounding pretty cool for now. What I might do is I'll chuck in a chorus flanger here. Just gonna have it on very basic settings here. I'm just going to use tape distortion, which is, I reckon, the cleanest distortion type that Scream has to offer. It's very good for most cases. I'm just going to play with this cut right here. And yeah, body B, I reckon, is the best to use here. It adds that signature, like, Reason Valley sound. You'll hear this type of bass in a lot of music nowadays. Might even use body C here, just because body C does sound like body B a lot, but I feel like it's more unique because everyone is using body B nowadays, so we'll go with C for today's video. And I'm just going to go ahead and add some effects here, and the first one I'm going to add is this reverb right here, the RV7000 Mark II, and I'm just going to add a preset on here called AMV Studio, and this preset is very good. It's used in a lot of OG patches. And then I'm actually going to do a second reverb on top of that. And I'm just going to use the RV7 digital reverb. And I'm going to have it on 100% here just to listen for the right reverb timbre. So what I'm listening for is kind of the room size that matches the tonality of the bass. I'm just going to bring that dry wet down. And yeah, that'll sort of add a bit more metallic character to the bass because it's got a really small room reverb on it. And it'll also add a bit more stereo as well. I'm just going to bring up the high end here a little bit as well. I'm just going to add a channel EQ here. By the way, the purpose of right-clicking on each of these devices and doing this is because it will automatically route it from the last device to the output. or to the next device. If you right click here and add an effect, you can see that if we click tab here or flip rack, it will automatically route to the reverb here and then out into the output. Also on top of that, something that I did discover recently is if your tab key isn't working and you can't flip the rack, it's because caps lock is on. I don't know why Reason did this, but for some reason if you have caps lock on, it acts as like a flip rack lock. So yeah, if you can't flip it with tab, that is why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the channel EQ and I'm going to put it on the end here instead. So we're just removing the low end before we go out of Reason there. We're just going to take another EQ. Cut off a bit more of that low end. Use the high shelf here to boost the highs a little bit more. Then I'm going to use multiband compression here to bring the sound out a little bit more. You can also use OTT, but I find that multiband compression is a bit better because OTT, if you look at the bands right here, so this is the compression part of it, and you have the input part of it right here. OTT kind of boosts it into the compression a little bit more, so it is a bit more of a harsh compression. I'm going to bring that in and up the time a little bit and the output. So I'm going to slightly dip around 200 Hz here. Just because I can hear this peak coming through and it's kind of annoying me. You can hear it there if I accentuate it a bit more. I'm going to use G-clip here, which you can use any other free clipper, but I'm kind of just going to soft clip the bass here. And then I'm going to cut the low end out because clipping does create distortion. And I want my low end to be as clean as I can to leave enough room for the sub bass and to mitigate any phasing that might occur. So I reckon that's sounding pretty good, but we are going to need to add a sub, of course. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to Control-C, Control-V that over to the sub, and then I'm going to Control-A all of these, and then just bring the notes back a little bit here. So the purpose of that is I'm going to be using an envelope sub, and I'm just going to add that on and then use Malstrom, and I'm just going to make the attack and release here about 50-50. So you can hear it kind of has like a bit of a womp. You can also use Mod B and just make like a simple wub like that. But I have been liking the envelope subs a little bit more lately. So now we have a bit of bass in our track, but I'm going to make sure that the sub is as loud as it can be. Just going to add a limiter here and then up it a little bit until I see that it's coming through. There we go, only coming through a little bit. And I'm just going to bring it back 1 dB, just because with the bass and the sub playing at the same time, the sub can kind of overwhelm the bass. And I'm just going to make my mix a little bit more dynamic and less squashed by bringing back the sub a tiny bit. So you can hear now though that the sub and the kick distorting when they play, and that's because they're both really low-end sounds. So a good way to mix them together is by using sidechain. Now, I will say that back in the day, I did just used to use a utility here, which is an Ableton effect where you can just control the gain, the width, the balance. And what I would do is I would go in the automation here by either clicking this button or A, and then I would just kind of shape a volume automation clip around the shape of the kick, and then just go like this. However, this also affects the bass, and what I want my sidechain to do is only sidechain the sub. But I do still want it to sidechain other elements and anything in this group that is, around the 200 Hz and below range, which is around the body of the kick here. Like if we put an EQ on here, you can see about 200 Hz and below is the meat of the kick, if you will. And so I'm going to use this plugin called Shaperbox, which I do recommend buying. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in my sidechain input here, the kick. I'm going to go audio, and I'm going to go external signal in. And now when I play my track, you can see it creates kind of the kick waveform inside of Shaperbox here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shape it around the shape of my kick, and then I'm going to bring this EQ back here from the right side, make it a 24 dB band split, and put it at around 200 Hz. And this is going to make sure that only that low end is sidechained. Now you can hear there's no more distortion. You can hear that slight click when we play it, but you can't really hear it when everything else is going at the same time. And you can actually hear it a little bit, so what we're going to do is just ease up on this part here. Just bring it out a tiny bit more. You might even go for something like this. I think it is because we're just walling it like that is why it's doing that. Now if we play it, there we go. Managed to fix up that little clicking noise. It just had too harsh of a sidechain curve there. So we'll just bring that back. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of reverb on this bass again by just running it through that reverb stand. Might also tone down the reverb in Reason Rack slightly. And I'm going to also add a couple more return tracks here for some different effects I like to use. So I'm going to color them the same color as the other ones. I'm going to name one of these Spring and one of these Echo. And I'll show you the different presets I use on here. So I'm going to open up a Reason plugin effect, which is the effect version of Reason Rack. And I'm going to open up RV7000. Now, one of the effects I like to use is Dub Slappy Spring. I'm not going to use my Wyvern settings one, I'm just going to use the default one. I'll bring down the pre-delay slightly, and then I'm going to up the dispersion amount all the way. The pre-delay pretty much is just whenever the sound goes through the reverb, how long before the spring is triggered. So I want that to trigger straight away when the sound comes through. And we'll leave the length at 1 M there. And so what that's going to do is it's going to make it triplet time. And you'll hear that when I play it. And I'm going to bring the diffusion up, or rather down to 30 here. I might also bring the dispersion frequency down to 1.5 kilohertz there. And then, let's see. I think that should be all good. I might add another low cut EQ here though. And then I'm going to do that again for the echo here, but I'm going to use a different preset here called Space Echo. And I'm going to adjust the settings here again. I'm going to make the echo time 2. I'm going to make the diffusion about 87, spread all the way up and then I'm going to add this in slightly and you'll hear what it does. So what I might do here is I might group this track and name this one basses, and I'm just going to put the reverb on everything in this group. This is just so that if I want to add maybe an alternate bass later in the track, I can do that and the reverbs will apply to anything in this bass group. But because we also did do those low cuts on the return tracks, that means that the sub won't be going through any of the reverbs. It'll be cut off. And I'm going to add the space echo now at -25. So you can hear that in the background. Adds that really nice decay on that bass right there. And then I'm going to use that spring clap now by just grabbing that one when I'm in the automation mode, and this will bring it up straight away instead of having to go through and select it. And I'm just going to create a little bit of a shape like this. You can hear there it is super legato and I want to kind of stabby. So I'm going to bring it down here like this. And I do think that that bass is a little bit too dark. I might bring up the EQ here. There we go. So I do think that is a little bit too stabby. I'll bring it out like that. There we go. And I might also lower that slightly because it did clip a little bit when I put it through there. Bring it down to -5 maybe. See how that sounds. Not bad. Another thing I might do here is I'm going to put some EQs on the drums. So I'm going to cut out the low end of the clap there, and then I'm going to also boost the brightness here by just doing a high shelf. So now what I think we need is some effects in the background. So what I'm going to be using here are some effects that I've made using Operator. I will be putting these up on Patreon for anyone who's following. These are also going to be in the first sample pack that I release. So yeah, make sure you're following on Patreon. You will get this song when it's completed, as well as this little effects bundle for you to use. But yeah, I'm just going to take a couple of these here and just kind of drop them in every 4 bars. So I'll drop one at the start there. I'm just going to fade it off. And then I'll drop another one there and just fade it off. Drop this one here. Do a little fade again. And then this little zipper sound, I'm just going to fade that off again. And what I'm going to do as well is turn this down to -20. So that it's really quiet in the background, but I'm going to full send it through the delay and reverb. The delay as well is just a ping pong delay on quarter note, and then that's also got that low cut there. And so yeah, what I'm going to do is I'll extend this loop, and I'm just going to duplicate everything that we've made so far over a little bit. Alright, so this is sounding pretty good so far, but we are going to need to do some variation because people will get very bored and click off this song if I were to put it out and not do a little bit of variation on the synth. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete these first 2 beats just so that there's a little bit of silence before the drop comes in. Do it again here, just for a bit of flow. So yeah, that's sounding pretty good now with that drum groove. I'm just taking out some drums to kind of give it a little bit of room to breathe. And I do recommend, if you're ever struggling with your drums, try listening to some of your favorite tracks and listening to what they do with their drums. I remember doing that when I was really struggling, and I really liked the way that Seven structured his drums. And I remember listening back to all his tracks and kind of listening to when the kick and the clap would stop playing when they'd come in. And then I kind of based my structure around that, and then eventually took inspiration from more OG rhythm, like, AD or LV when it comes to like percussion work and hi-hats and everything. But yeah, for this song, we're not going to do too much complex drum work. We're just going to keep it really simple. And so what I'll do here is I'm just going to copy these over again, but we'll do a little change for the middle section here, and I'm going to add an open hat. So I'm just going to color that the same as well. I'll copy over the low cut EQ, and I'm just going to go have a look in my samples for open hat. I might try using this one real quick. I just kind of want to add it in between every drum right here. I'm just going to select this and go warp real quick. And then I'm going to try warping it on repitch mode. I'm just going to hold shift so that you see that little square bracket with the arrow. That basically means that now we can stretch it. So listen to how this sounds. Not too bad actually if we warp it on repitch. Repitch is the cleanest mode to warp it on besides Complex Pro. I find repitch sounds a lot more natural and a lot cleaner. So I reckon we'll turn that down slightly because it is clipping pretty hard. Add a little bit of reverb on the side here for that one as well. Yeah, it's sounding pretty good. Might lower it down as well so it's less of a noticeable change and it's more felt, because I do feel like it was a bit too loud at -4. There we go, so it's sounding pretty good now. What we'll focus on now is getting some variation for this bass. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit Control G on this Reason Rack, and then I'm going to click this little dial button, and I'm going to spam the plus button here, and this will bring out all the macros. And then I'm going to use this little arrow here to pop this out to the side, and I'm going to hit Configure. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to select some parameters that I'd like to automate later. So I reckon the mod A rate, mod B rate, and all I'm doing here is just clicking on them. You can also click on them and move them around slightly if they're not picking up. What I'll also grab is maybe the index and the motion. Also grab the mod B to motion. I might do the filter frequency, the filter resonance, filter envelope attack, filter envelope amount, and we'll see how we go with those for now. The reason I'm doing this is because if you're just automating the parameters like this is totally fine, but when you reload the project, they might not have the same names. Like, you can clearly see what they are on the side here. You got A rate, B rate, but when you reload it sometimes, it might go to like parameter 1001, 1002, and that can be kind of difficult to work out unless you have your project fully memorized. So an easy way to curb that is we can just go map, and then map the different parameters here to the macro rack. And what we'll do here is we'll rename this one to mod A rate, name this one to mod B rate, click that one, map index and motion. So index and then motion. Okay, and then this one I remember was mod B motion, and then name this one frequency. This one is resonance, and then we've got the filter, we'll name it ENV amount, and then we'll name this one ENV. This one was ENV amount. I remember this one was ENV attack. I remember, and I'll confirm that because this should be at 27, and that's also at 27. That's also why using the macro rack is good, because these parameters go from 0 to 1, but these parameters here go from 0 to 127, which is also what Reason works on as well. So that can be pretty helpful. And so what we'll do now is I'm going to color code all these. So I'm going to make anything that's like using the oscillators, for instance, index and motion, I'm going to make those lime. And then anything on the modulators, I'm going to make these lime green. Anything related to the filter, I'm going to make these orange. Okay, so that's looking pretty good now. And what I'm going to do is maybe do some variation in the MIDI first, to be honest. Might go for a classic little pattern like this. I'm just going to hold mouse 1 and delete all those. And I'm just going to copy them over like that. So yeah, I reckon we'll try that pattern for now, and we'll do some variation with it every now and again. So with variation in Riddim, you can do it pretty much however you like, but I like to do it in groups of about 4 or 8 to make it interesting. Might do my first automation here with the index. Yeah, I reckon that's sounding pretty good for variation so far. With using Square 4 as well, because it is a wavetable with so many good sweet spots, like at the start you get the really tonal sounding part of the bass, and then towards the end you get the really crunchy stuff. So what you can do is just automate the index every now and again, and you'll get good results pretty much every time, because Square 4 has so many good sweet spots in it. So I'm just going to duplicate all this again right here. And one thing I might do as well to kind of give the track a little bit more impact is I'll take the sub out for these first 2 beats. And you can hear when we play it back now, it'll have so much more impact when the sub comes in a little bit later. So yeah, I just pretty much locked in a little bit there. Sorry for not speaking or anything, but I was just kind of twisting the index and frequency knobs, finding some really nice sweet spots that I liked. And what I reckon we might do here is change the rate to quarter note for this last section. We'll do a slightly different pattern here as well. Also, if you want to make sure that when you duplicate the clips, the automation doesn't copy across, that's what this little lock icon is for next to the automation. So pretty much you can see that if we were to have like I don't know, different index automation and we duplicate this across, it would delete all that index automation. But what we want to do instead is hit this and it'll keep all that automation. In this particular example, it doesn't really matter because we're going to be changing a lot of different stuff in the automation anyway. But if you want to change the flow of one section really quick, but still keep the same sort of automation for whatever tonality you're going for, that can be kind of a useful thing to know how to use there. Also, if you're like copying over the drums and you have, automation like we did earlier, that can also be useful for that too. And so what we'll do now is you might mess around with maybe this mod B to motion and kind of lay it back a little bit by putting it more towards 63. 63 is basically the middle point in the mod B to motion there where it's not really controlling the motion. So we'll put it at about 40 and listen to how that sounds. So I reckon that's sounding pretty good now. You can hear now they're kind of more on the same page when it comes to volume there. But you can hear that it's kind of brought back the scream slightly. So what we're going to do to compensate there is just up the volume out of Malstrom because the auto on scream reacts to the volume. You kind of hear the scale not swinging as much when it's down in volume versus when it's high in volume it'll swing harder. I'm just going to bring that master level back as well to compensate. Might also just add a little bit of a gap on these last few sections just to have it transition more smoothly. You can hear what that does right here. So then what I'm going to do here is just copy those over. And then I'm going to do a little bit of an intro now. So I'm just going to copy these drums here and paste those over there. And I'm just going to copy over the kick like this and just do a simple intro. So I'm just going to sort of rearrange the drums here so that it's only hi-hats for a little bit and put a kick there as well. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap there. And what we're going to do now is add a little bit of an instrument into the song. So I'm going to be using Thor for this one. Now, this synth does look a bit overwhelming, but it's really not as hard as it looks. So I'll show you guys how you can use Thor to make some really simple intro type sounds. So I'm going to open another MIDI clip here by using that Control-Shift-M hotkey I used earlier. Because you wrote the song in F, I'm just going to put a little MIDI note on F. Just every now and again like that. And then I'm going to hit Control-L on that and loop that. And then what I'm going to do is add a bit of release. A bit of attack. Turn this on triplet right here. And reshape it to waveform 3. And then I might select the square wave here and then scroll down to 4 on the pulse width position. And then what I'm going to do here is make the LFO control the pitch of the oscillator here. So to do that, we go source, and then we want to select LFO 1, destination, oscillator 1, pitch, and then the amount, turn that one up. So you can hear right now that it's controlling the pitch. So I might have it as like a bit more of a rising sound for this. And then I'm going to use LFO 2 here, which is this LFO here, and I'm going to give it a bit of a staircase shape. Here we'll go for number 6, and I'll put it on 2/4. And then I'm going to select the same thing. Turn on a bit of chorus. We'll leave the delay for sends instead. And also up the filter frequency slightly here, but I might keep it kind of dimmer instead. You can also use like different oscillator type here, maybe multi-oscillator. And in order to get it to come through, you just need to make sure to have that enabled. And then also copy over the different modulations here to oscillator 2 pitch as well. Because we kind of want it to be the same thing across the board. Try wavetable instead. Alright, so I reckon that sounds kind of cool for now. We'll go out here and we might actually bring that filter up so that we can hear a bit more of that bell sound on the high end. And I'm just going to low cut it again here, maybe at 300. And I'm just going to bring both of these to -20. And here we have a bit of panning going on now. And I'm going to also boost the master volume out of Thor. Now make it low for this first part. I just hit Control A there and used Shift and the up and down arrows to change the octave. Now we have a cool sound which we can use throughout the drop as well. What we also might do is make maybe like a R2AD style intro bass here by just doing like a bit of a phaser square And so I'm just going to make a really long note on F right here. And then what I'm going to do is open up Thor once again, and I'm just going to select square. Once again, adding a bit of attack and release. I'm going to add a phaser on here. So that's sounding really good at the moment. But one thing you'll notice about using a really low down note like that and using chorus is it may cause a bit of phasing in the low end. So I'm going to show you guys how to make a clean sort of respace sound here. So I'm going to open up Spectrum. So you can see here by pulling it up that fundamental is oscillating back and forth all the time, not really having consistent volume. So I want to change that. So what I'm going to do is bring in channel EQ again and just low cut that at about 150. I'll go to 200 actually. And I might even add another effect here called Audiomatic Retro Transformer. I'll chuck it on Psych. Just for a bit more subtle panning. And what I'm going to do now is open up the devices and we'll grab the line mixer right here and I'm just going to drag that in while holding shift. That just ensures that it doesn't route to anything. What I'm going to do now is open up the input output right here and bring these wires to this first one here and then bring this master out up here. So pretty much just putting it through a mixer. And then I'm just going to close the programmer on Thor real quick and hold Control and drag. And then that's going to create a copy of that. I'm going to route this into the audio in. And then I'm just going to make this one a sine, turn off the chorus. And then now if we solo this, we should have a nice clean sine wave. And I can see we have a really nice, clean respace. I might also up the frequency here. Oh, that is on the sine. Do it on the square instead. Thing I might also add to this bass real quick is I'm just going to add this preset called Zorbus, which is a legacy chorus preset. If you go to packs down here and search for just Zorb, and then go to Call Library, Devices, Audio Effects, follow the tree down, you get Zorbus, which is this chorus effect. I'm just going to dial that in a little bit for a little bit more width and some detune. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight everything here, make sure that the lock is off for this one because we want a copy of the automation. And what I'm going to do is just hit Control D, and then I'll highlight the intro again, and just hit Control C, Control V. And then I'm going to open up the main and go Utility. And then I'm just going to make a little automation clip so that it'll fade out the song at the end. And then I reckon what we'll do for this song is, honestly, I might just make the second drop a bit of a fake out to make it a bit more of a DJ tool. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to clear the first 4 bars of drums by just shift and then selecting that group and then just backspace. And now we have a little bit of a fake out. We can also take out the sub. I also just changed the sub slightly here. So it's only the 2 beats that get the no sub, because I felt like the sub was coming out a little bit too often and not staying for long enough. So now it sounds pretty good to me, I think. And so yeah, I'm pretty happy with the dub I've made today, to be honest. The only thing I'll do is I might make some minor adjustments to a couple things before I throw it up on Patreon. But yeah, that's pretty much how I make a rhythm track from start to finish in Ableton. So yeah, make sure you guys are following the Patreon because I will be posting this full song up on there. It's going to be a follower only exclusive. So all you'll need to do is follow for free on Patreon and then you can find the post and download the song. On top of that, I am going to be throwing up the project file for the tier 2 subscribers. Once again, more information is going to come out about that tier on Instagram and Patreon when I release it. Basically, it's going to be an exclusive tier for production content involving, advanced rhythm production techniques, as well as some other videos and some other resources like combinators and samples and sample packs, other things like that when I get around to them. On top of that, there will be more of these track creation videos on there where I'll be including the project and stems and stuff like that. So yeah, this one is going to be one of the free videos, but the rest from now on will be up on Patreon. So yeah, if you feel like supporting, make sure to subscribe to me there. And yeah, I hope you guys were able to learn a bit from this. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll be putting out some more videos soon. Peace.